Defended my cheating dad and my parents' divorce because my mom treated me like a ghost. Now my family's shattered. I'm a 19-year-old guy, the oldest of 3 kids. My brother is 11 and my sister is 8, and growing up in my family was always kind of messy. Honestly, I just always knew it. Even as a kid, it felt obvious that I didn't really fit in with my mom or her side of the family. It's strange looking back on it, but I really started noticing it more as my brother and sister got older. With them, my mom was warm and attentive. Anything my sister made at school, my mom would treat it like some masterpiece, put it up on the fridge, show it to everyone. But if I made something as a kid, my mom barely even glanced at it. It was like I was just invisible, nothing I did mattered. My aunt, my mom's sister, was a similar story. She'd walk into a room and light up for my younger siblings, laughing and asking about their day, hugging them, everything. With me? She could barely bother to speak to me. If I tried to start a conversation, it just went nowhere. It was this subtle, constant thing, like being on the outside of the family looking in. And it went further than that. There were times when my mom straight up wouldn't set a plate for me at family meals. I had to grab my own or sometimes eat later. One year for the family Christmas card, she actually picked a photo that didn't have me in it. That stuff sticks in your head. I actually remember hearing my parents fight over it sometimes. My dad would ask her to try to include me, and it never really happened. Maybe I should have realized then that this was a sign that things weren't going to last. Now, after everything, it's all making sense. My dad, though, was always different. His side of the family made me feel loved, and my relationship with my father is honestly amazing. He's the best dad I could ever ask for. When my parents finally sat us down to tell us they were getting a divorce, I felt nothing. Not shock, not sadness, just numbness, total numbness. Both my siblings started crying, totally distraught, but I just sat there empty. I guess you get used to things being bad, and when it falls apart, it doesn't even shock you. My aunt was there the day they broke the news. She started gathering me and my siblings up, saying we'd go stay with my mom for a while. And I just snapped. I couldn't stand the idea of going to live with a woman who never wanted me in the first place and made that perfectly clear my whole life. I blurted out, right in front of everyone, that I didn't want to leave my house and go stay with my mom and my aunt. My mother just sat there, looking sad, not saying a word. I stormed out to my bedroom to just be alone. But my aunt followed me and started putting the pressure on, trying to guilt me, telling me how much my siblings look up to me, how my mom needed me now more than ever, and how I had to be there for her. I couldn't take it. I told her, I don't want to be there for that TCH, and she lost it at me. That's when she let it slip that my dad had cheated, like that was supposed to make my mom the victim and me the bad guy. And you know what? In that moment, I just didn't care. I brought up everything from my past. I told my aunt, why would I care about someone who literally wanted me aborted and treated me like garbage all my life? My real pain wasn't just about the abortion, it was everything, all those little and big moments she made me feel unwanted. My aunt said it was complicated and basically told me I had no right to resent my mother for it. That's when my parents came up because we were yelling, and finally, after all that, they stepped in and sent my aunt away, leaving me alone in my room. Now, here I am, weeks later, staying with my dad. My mom keeps trying to reach out and talk to me, but I just can't do it. I feel especially pathetic when I think about my siblings. They really look up to me, sometimes it feels like I'm a third parent to them. I feel like I've let them down by not being there right now, not helping them through the divorce. Instead, I just sit around and cry about it instead of being proactive, calling or texting to let them know I'm still there. It makes me feel weak. To make things worse, my little sister overheard parts of the fight I had with my aunt and, being only 8, she didn't fully understand. So she Googled things and now believes our mom actually tried to kill me. She's refusing to believe any explanations my mom or aunt give and has completely withdrawn from them. She's convinced our mom hates me and wants to separate us. My brother seems to be handling things better on the surface, but we barely talk. Apparently, my mom and my aunt are desperate to explain things to my sister. They want her to know my mom didn't try to kill me and doesn't hate me. My dad just wants me to forgive my mom or at least talk to her. He's hoping for some kind of relationship between us, but I'm just not convinced I even want that. Honestly, I don't even know anymore how I feel about the abortion. I can see now that it was a teen pregnancy, and that's complicated. I don't think I hate my mom for that specific thing. She was a scared kid, and that's real. But what sticks with me is how she treated me all these years, how she always chose to treat me differently and worse than my siblings. That's what I can't forgive. And I just can't bring myself to talk to her again. As for my dad cheating, yeah, that was a scummy thing to do, and I know it. But I can't bring myself to care. He's the only one who's ever truly supported me, so even though it makes me feel like a terrible person, I just can't cast him out. I feel lost and right all at once, then like a complete asshole for giving my dad a pass when, by any logic, I shouldn't. But that's where I am, alone, confused, and not sure where to go next. Update 1. I barely slept last night, my mind spinning with everything that's happened. I felt awful at school, so my dad picked me up early and we went out to lunch together. When we got back home, I finally summoned enough courage to ask him all the questions that had been weighing on me, the ones eating away at me, and the ones people keep bringing up, the ones I was both desperate and scared to hear the answers to. In my family, talking about hard things or feelings just isn't something we ever do. The silence had always been thick, but this time I broke it. I started by asking my dad about his affair partner, what really happened there. It was something I needed to know, even though part of me didn't want the details, but I had to ask, just in case she'd be moving in or popping up in my daily life. My dad surprised me with his honesty. He told me the affair lasted 5 months. He said he'd been feeling drained in his marriage to my mom and he made a terrible, selfish decision. It wasn't some dramatic reveal. He explained that the truth didn't come out because my mom went through his phone or anything like that. He'd confessed himself. As time went on, he said he felt more and more disgusted with himself, feeling like a terrible father every time he came home to us after cheating. He promised me that he's done speaking to this woman for good, and he plans on staying single, not dating or marrying anyone new, until all of us kids are grown. Then I asked him about my mom, specifically, those things I'd heard about her trying to end her pregnancy. It's something I didn't mention before, but I always wondered about his role and what he knew about it all. He told me he actually didn't even know she was pregnant until maybe a week or 2 before I was born. He could only tell me the little bit my mother had shared with him. He doesn't know all the details, just the broad strokes. Here's what he did know. My mom found out she was pregnant when she was about 16 or 17. She told my aunt first, and they both panicked. My aunt tried to help my mom get an abortion, but my mom's parents found out and stopped it. Despite that, my aunt tried again, but the second attempt was discovered too. After that, my mom's parents sent my aunt away to live with other relatives until after I was born. That's the whole story, as far as either of us knows. So, I guess I wasn't a failed abortion, just a prevented one. But, honestly, I don't think it makes much difference. Looking for some relief, my grandparents said they'll take me and my siblings out this weekend to do something fun. I'm really looking forward to that. I just want to spend time with my siblings, get away from all these questions and chaos for a while, and I know with my grandparents there, I won't have to talk about any of it. After everything, I'm actually feeling a bit better. Writing all this out, even if it's just for strangers no one I know, is helping me process. I haven't brought up therapy with my dad yet, despite all the advice I've gotten, but I am planning to write my mom a letter and start journaling for myself. I'm going to have a real conversation with her after she's read and had time to process what I've written. I don't know when that'll be, soon, though. Very soon. Update 2. I ended up writing the letter. I thought it would take days, but once I started it just poured out of me. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told her exactly what I remembered, exactly how it felt growing up, and I told her I wasn't asking for an apology, I was asking for an explanation. I folded it up and drove it over to her house myself. I didn't ring the bell. I just slid it under the door and left. The grandparents thing happened the next day. We took my brother and sister to the aquarium because my sister is obsessed with jellyfish, and for a couple hours it felt almost normal. She held my hand, pressed her face to the glass, asked me if jellyfish are immortal and if that meant they were ghosts. Then in the gift shop, she saw a rack of those cheesy family picture frames and just crumpled. No warning. Full-on sobbing. She wouldn't let my mom's calls go through to her iPad earlier in the day and I guess it all boiled over. She wouldn't talk to our grandparents or my dad. She just said, "I want to go home but not there," meaning not to my mom's. I took her outside and sat with her on the curb until she could breathe again. My grandfather drove my brother home to my dad's place. I took my sister to my mom's house because she wouldn't stop asking to see our cat, and I figured if I was there too, maybe she'd actually go inside. My mom was home. She didn't look surprised to see me, which immediately made my stomach knot up. She'd gotten my letter. She didn't try to hug me or anything. She just asked if my sister could go play in her room for a few minutes and asked me if I would sit at the kitchen table. There was a shoebox on it, like one of those boxes people keep old holiday cards in. She didn't touch it at first. She just said, "I'm not going to tell you I was a good mother to you. I wasn't. I'm going to tell you why it happened, and you can hate me, but you're not crazy. You didn't imagine it." She opened the box and started taking things out very carefully, like everything inside could break. A hospital bracelet. Polaroids that had that washed out look. An envelope from some county 2 hours away. The first thing that really hit me was a discharge paper with a last name I didn't recognize. Under mother, it didn't say my mom's name. It said my aunt's. I actually laughed because it felt so stupidly obvious all of a sudden, and then I felt like I was going to be sick. My mom said my grandparents had made everybody lie. My aunt got sent away, had me at a relative's house under that other last name, and when she came back, I belonged to my mom. My mom was supposed to be the fixer. That's the word she used. She said her parents told her she had already ruined everything by letting it get this far, and if she wanted any hope at a normal life again, she would take me and it would be done, it would be handled. The story would be rewritten before school started and nobody would ever need to know. My dad didn't know any of this when I was born. He found out after he married my mom and they got a copy of the amended birth certificate for school. That was the week or 2 before story he had. He never took a DNA test. He told her he didn't need one. He told her I was his and that was it. I think I asked 100 questions without breathing. I asked if my aunt had ever wanted me. My mom said yes and also no. She said the truth is that nobody asked my aunt what she wanted because the adults were too busy being terrified. She said there was a lot she's not allowed to tell me that is my aunt's to say, and I snapped back that I'm 19, not 5, and the only person who's been treated like a child in this family is me. I asked if that's why my aunt can't stand me. My mom said, very quietly, that my aunt doesn't hate me. She hates herself. She can't stand looking at me because she sees the worst thing that ever happened to her and also the fact that she did nothing when she finally could have done something. She also said those were explanations and not excuses, and that nothing explains leaving my name off the Christmas card. Nothing explains not putting a plate down for me. She said she did those things because resentment becomes a habit if you feed it, and she fed it. I told her I didn't want metaphors. I wanted to know who my biological father is. She said she doesn't know for sure. She said what she knows is that my aunt dated a boy that summer who was older and not honest about a lot of things, and that there was also a night nobody ever really spoke about that didn't feel like dating. I asked if she meant assault and she nodded. I asked if my aunt knows which it is and she said she doesn't think so. She said they never reported anything because her parents decided what would be reported and what wouldn't, and they decided nothing would be. I asked why nobody told me any of this when I turned 18. She said she's been scared every day for 19 years and it made her a coward. She said she started therapy last month after my dad confessed the affair, and the therapist told her that if she wanted any relationship with me at all, she had to tell me every ugly thing. She said the therapist told her not to manage me anymore, not to try to pre-decide what I could handle, to give me the respect she never has. My sister wandered out halfway through holding the cat like a baby and asked if we could watch the movie with the singing animals. My mom wiped her face and said okay. I told my sister I'd come back tomorrow because she was drooping and I could tell she would fall asleep on the couch. My mom asked if tomorrow could be just us for an hour, with no box. I didn't give her an answer. I went home and sat in my car for an hour without turning the engine off. My dad was waiting at the door. He didn't look shocked when I told him. He said he knew pieces. He said he found the envelope when I was 12 and asked my mom and my grandparents and they told him the same story, family adoption, done to save face. He said that he wanted to tell me, but he was afraid of blowing up my life before I could choose for myself, and he told me that was probably cowardly and he's sorry. He said he is sorry for cheating and sorry for staying as long as he did, sorry for every little way I learned to live around the truth. I asked him if he ever resented me. He didn't even wait, he said no, not for a second. I didn't sleep again. I kept seeing the hospital bracelet, my aunt's name in that cheap ink. I kept seeing my mom's hands shaking. I kept hearing my sister's voice saying she wanted to go home but not there. This morning I texted my aunt and told her I know. I told her she doesn't get to vanish. She sent back a single line asking if I would meet her somewhere public. We sat at a park on opposite ends of a bench for a long time. She looked 10 years older. She didn't deny anything. She didn't tell me a different version. She said she wakes up every day wishing she could start over at 16 and do something different. She said she's sorry she made me think I wasn't worth speaking to because that was easier than admitting she was the one who was scared. She said one other thing that I didn't expect, that she used to leave the room on purpose when I came in because she was terrified that if she started loving me the way she wanted to, she would take me and run and then ruin me in some new way. It made me angry and it made me want to hug her and I did neither. I don't know what I'm going to do with any of this. I told my mom I'll go to therapy with her but I'm not moving in, I'm not pretending nothing happened, and I'm not being the messenger between her and my siblings. I told my dad I'm staying with him, and he said okay and left it at that. I told my sister that the internet is not a parent and that I will answer her questions when she asks them, and she asked if our aunt was her mom too and I said no, she's her aunt and always will be, and that none of this changes that we're brother and sister. She nodded like she was 80 and said, okay. Update 3. I went to therapy with my mom. The office looked like a dentist's waiting room if a kindergarten teacher designed it. Plants that weren't real but tried hard, a diffuser that made the room smell like oranges, a box of tissues folded into those neat triangles that are supposed to make you feel okay using them. The therapist said my first name like it was a question. I didn't sit next to my mom. I sat across from her and I could see the vein in her temple jump whenever she swallowed. It wasn't dramatic. Nobody screamed. It was worse than that. She told the therapist she wanted to tell me everything again but this time in complete sentences without apologizing in the middle of them. She said she was 19 once too and that 19 felt like standing on one foot on a cliff. I told her she doesn't get to make 19 about her. The therapist nodded like that was the right answer on a test. My mom didn't cry for the first 20 minutes. Then the therapist asked what the worst thing she ever did to me was and my mom said, he asked my sister to be his mother and I said yes, and she bit the inside of her cheek so hard she left teeth marks. I told her I didn't want poetry. I asked her for a name. She stared at the rug and said there isn't one she trusts. He had a name, she said, I just don't know if it was his. I asked if his family had a name. That broke something open. She said enough for a map without saying a street, church picnic, Legion Hall, a last name that has a park named after it in their town. The therapist said we should press pause. I told her I don't need pauses, I need lines that are straight. When it was over my mom asked if I wanted coffee and I said no and walked to my car and didn't turn it on for 10 minutes. Then I drove to my grandparents' house. I was stupid and knocked like I was selling something. My grandfather called me buddy and my grandmother asked if I wanted soup even though it was 80 degrees. I put the hospital bracelet on their kitchen table and everyone stopped breathing. My grandfather stared at the cheap plastic like it was a grenade and then he said the sentence I hated before he finished it. We did what we had to do. I told him to try again. He said, we kept our family together. I asked whose. My grandmother wouldn't meet my eyes. She wrapped and unwrapped the tie on her robe and finally said she called a clerk at that county 2 hours away and the clerk helped and I asked if help means a different mother on paper and she flinched and said yes. My grandfather tried to go into the weather, the economy, the cost of groceries. I told him I would walk out if he said one more word that wasn't yes or no. Did you know about the boy? Yes. Did you know he was older? Yes. Did you know there was a night that wasn't a date? Yes. Did you tell anyone? No. Did you stop my aunt from telling anyone? He opened his mouth and closed it and my grandmother answered yes and then put both hands over her mouth like she could stuff the word back in. My grandfather said they didn't want to ruin a life. I told him whose. He said mine. I told him to stop pretending he saved me when what he saved was his Christmas card. He stood up like he was going to leave his own kitchen and then sat back down like the chair had teeth. My grandmother started listing all the good things they did for me: school supplies, rides to practice, a winter coat, and I let her talk until her voice ran out and then I told them I am not a charity project to balance out a sin. I told them when I send the DNA kit in, if it comes back with a name you recognize, and it will, I want them to practice saying, we are sorry. We should have protected our daughter and we didn't. My phone buzzed in my pocket the whole time. When I got outside, it was the school. My sister had told her teacher that our mom tried to kill my brother before he was born and she steals people, and her teacher is a normal adult living in the world who is legally not allowed to pretend that sentence didn't happen. 10 minutes later there was a woman at my dad's door with a canvas bag and a badge on a lanyard and a notebook she didn't really want to open. She spoke quietly, like everything might break if she said it too loud. She asked my sister if she felt safe and my sister didn't answer her. She looked at me. I said yes because in this house she does, and I said my mother has never hit me or my siblings, and I said there is a complicated history that is going to sound like a horror movie if you reduce it to a paragraph. My dad didn't make me do the talking but he didn't stop me either. They asked if we would do a joint conversation at my mom's. My sister wrapped her arms around my waist and said only if I came. So we went. It was very quiet at my mom's house. The cat did that thing where he rubs into your ankle like he owns the lease. The social worker sat on the edge of our couch like it might be rude to sink into it. My mom looked like she had dug herself under the house and was talking through the floorboards. She told the woman that she never wanted to hurt any of us and that she understands grown-up choices have child consequences. She said she is in therapy. The woman asked if my sister had ever been left alone, if there were guns, if anyone drank too much, if anyone had ever touched her in a way that felt wrong. My sister said no to all of it in a voice like she was reciting something. Then she asked the social worker if she could make the internet quiet, and the woman smiled a little and said she wished she could. My brother didn't say much. He watched all of us like he was memorizing blocking for a play he wasn't sure he was in. Before the woman left, she asked me if I felt safe with my mom. I said I don't feel any one thing with my mom but I feel safe. My mom cried for the first time that day when my sister asked if she could hold the cat during the questions and the woman said yes. After they left, my mom handed me a package. It was a DNA kit. She said she ordered it the night I dropped the letter under her door. You don't have to use mine, she said. I just wanted you to know I wasn't going to stall. I did it in my car because I couldn't stand the idea of spitting into a tube in front of anyone. I watched my spit creep up to the line and felt ridiculous and then not ridiculous at all, like I was collecting a piece of myself for the first time. I drove straight to the blue mailbox outside the post office and dropped it in, and I had the stupid impulse to apologize to it. The email told me 6 to 8 weeks. I keep opening the app like that will change physics. I thought that would be the end of the day until my aunt called. She never calls me. She said my name and then she said she went to the police station in that county. She said she sat in a room with a laminated poster about bicycle safety and told a stranger about a night behind a gym. She said she knows it's probably too late for anything criminal and that the detective told her that in the careful voice people use for broken things, but that he took her statement and it is a piece of paper that exists now with her name on it. I am sorry I didn't do it when it mattered, she said. I didn't tell her it still matters because I'm trying not to rescue anyone right now. She told me one other thing. The last name my mom said in the therapist's office, the park name, it is the same last name as the family that used to sit in the front pew at their church. She said she doesn't have a first name she trusts, but that if a tree shows up in my matches with a cluster from that last name, that's where to look. I said okay and I meant it and then I hung up and I put my phone under my leg like I could use my weight to keep anything else from coming through it. I slept for 3 hours and woke up to a message request from a woman with a profile picture of a dog on a boat. She didn't write a lot. Your aunt reached out to me, she said. I think my brother might be part of your story. I'm not writing to make it harder. I'm writing to say if you want to ask me anything, I won't lie to you. I stared at the little circle with her face in it like if I looked hard enough I could pull out a name without asking. I didn't answer. I walked into my sister's room and sat on the floor next to her bed and watched her breathe for a minute, the way she used to do curled into me at the aquarium glass. Then I went back to my room and wrote down every question I could think of in a notebook I didn't know I still had. I wrote until my hand hurt. I keep thinking about my dad telling me I was his without testing anything. I keep thinking about my grandmother stirring tea she never drinks. I keep thinking about that park with the last name, the sign with peeling letters. I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow, but today I put something in the mail that has my name on it, and so did my aunt, and for the first time in a long time it feels like the adults are the ones catching up to me. Update 4. I answered the dog on a boat woman. I told her I didn't want to play 20 questions over text and asked if she'd meet me somewhere that wasn't a coffee shop with a chalkboard menu. She suggested the park with her family's last name on it like it was a test I had to pass. I went early. The plaque is a metal rectangle bolted to a rock, the kind with a list of donors stamped into it forever. The last name looks like a headline. It's so ordinary I wanted to laugh, like a joke that tries to hide by being boring. There were geese. They have no respect for human drama. They left green insults everywhere. I sat on a warm bench and practiced breathing with my eyes closed like a YouTube video, and when I opened them she was standing there holding a folder like a substitute teacher. She looked like somebody you'd trust to water your plants. She didn't say hello right away. She said, "You picked the spot," and I said, "Here is fine," and she sat on the far end like we were pretending to be strangers on a bus. She didn't waste time. She said her name and then her brother's name in the same breath like she was ripping off a bandage. It's a short name. It doesn't sound like anything. If you said it out loud in a grocery store 10 men would turn around. He was 19 the summer that matters. He worked the grill at the Legion Hall and drove a truck with a decal of a fish on the back window like a cartoon. She opened the folder and slid out a church newsletter, the kind printed on paper that remembers every fingerprint. There was a photo of a picnic, those metal folding tables, foil pans of food, kids with red mouths from popsicles, and there he was in a volunteer t-shirt holding a spatula like a microphone. The gym roof was a slice of gray in the background. Somebody had circled him in pen. Under the picture it said, "Thank you to our volunteers, the park name, family, M, D, and R." She tapped the R. "That's him," she said, and then did the thing where you don't cry by biting your lip hard enough to taste metal. I asked her if he knows she's doing this. She said yes, sort of. He knows she's helping a young man with questions, and I said that's one way to say it. She told me he got sober 4 years ago and moved 2 states away and builds decks now, like that's a detail that makes a person gentler. She told me their dad was a king in this town and that when kings die the statues don't go with them. She told me there were whispers back then that sounded like jokes if you laughed at the right time. She said she never heard my aunt's name until my aunt showed up in her inbox last night, and then a lot of little puzzle pieces in her head stood up and pointed in the same direction. She didn't ask me to tell her anything she wasn't supposed to know. She pulled a folded paper out of her bag that was a list of medical stuff, heart, diabetes, the boring things that kill people without making headlines, and said, "I thought you might want to know this even if everything else is wrong." I didn't take it right away because my hand felt oddly floaty, like it belonged to some other body. Then I took it and put it between my phone case and my phone like it needed to be held against a pulse. I texted my aunt from the parking lot and asked her for the first name. I didn't tell her the last. She sent the first name and it snapped into the one in the newsletter like magnets. When I told her, she didn't text back a word. She sent the barfed out looking heart emoji and then another and then "I'm sorry, and then, he offered me a ride home." I stood in a patch of sun like a lizard and thought about how the words "offered me a ride home" can hold so many things that don't belong in a car. The detective called me an hour later from a number that said unknown like a dare. He said he had my aunt's statement and the name I gave him was not new to their files, and then he said he couldn't tell me what that meant so I wouldn't have to testify that he did. He asked if I was willing to give a recorded statement about dates and what I have, and I said yes and pictured the church newsletter like a placemat in a diner. He asked if I had done a DNA test and when I told him it was in the mail, he said, "Good, but just so you know, it won't matter for us in this context." And I said I know, and he said he was sorry he had to say it anyway. Before he hung up he told me to write down my side while it was still a fresh ache because time sands things down and sometimes you need the sharp edges. I told my dad I met the sister. He put a glass on the counter and missed the coaster by an inch and didn't fix it. He asked me if I wanted him there if I talked to the brother and I said I didn't know if talking was happening and he said to imagine him in the parking lot with the hazard lights on either way. He doesn't know how to talk about this part but he keeps moving toward me, like a fish that learned stairs. My sister drew me a jellyfish with a crown and wrote "King of Jellies" in bubble letters, then asked me if we could sleep in the living room like a camping trip. We made a blanket city and watched the movie with the singing animals with the sound very low. She fell asleep with her hand on my wrist like I was a pulse ox in a hospital. In the morning, my brother asked me if I could take him to practice early and then sat in the passenger seat reading the rule book like it was a good book. He said, "Are you going to get a new last name?" In the most casual voice I have ever heard a person use to ask a question like that. I said, "No," and he nodded like he knew that already and wanted to see if I did. Therapy with my mom felt different the second time because the therapist made us sit on the same side like kids at a spelling bee. My aunt came. She wore a sweater in July and picked at a hangnail until a dot of blood appeared and she pretended it didn't. My mom brought a photo album I had never seen, the kind with those sticky pages you peel back like skin. There was a picture of me in a bathtub with a plastic boat and someone's knees just out of frame, and the therapist asked who took it like it was a trick. My aunt said I did very softly and then, not soft at all, I have not looked at him in a bathtub since, and I didn't know what to do with a sentence like that. The therapist said grief is the thing that happens when you lose something, and guilt is the thing you throw at yourself instead of looking at the empty space. It sounded like a refrigerator magnet, but it made my aunt put her head in her hands and breathe in counts like she was trying not to drown. After, I drove to the gym behind the church because that's where the picture was. It looks smaller than in my head because things do when you take the grown-up measuring tape to them. There's a dent in the metal door at the height of a shoulder and gum flattened into the sidewalk fossils. A man in a fluorescent vest was fixing a light and asked me if I was lost. I said no and he said good, like people who aren't lost are rare. I stood where the picnic table would have been and closed my eyes and heard a grill pop in my head and a radio playing something tinny and a girl's voice laughing at something that wasn't a joke. I didn't see anything magic. I just stood there a minute being a person in a place where other people were once. The dog on a boat woman texted me at dinner and said her brother would talk to me on the phone if I wanted, with her on the line. She said he's not promising anything except an ear. I stared at my plate and watched the ketchup dry at the edges and said yes, and then immediately felt like I had stepped off the edge of a pool I thought had water in it. We set a time for 9. I went to my car out of habit and didn't start it and turned the air to nothing and listened to the neighbor's wind chime do a nervous little song. The call came in as no caller ID, which felt like a joke the universe would make if it was meaner. The sister said hello first. She said my name like she was introducing a guest on a radio show, and then there was a breath and a man said my name, as if he already knew how to say it, as if somebody had said it to him 10,000 times once, like a prayer or a warning. He sounded younger than he is supposed to be and older than I wanted. He said he didn't remember my aunt. He said that fast. Then slower he said he remembered that summer, the picnic, the truck, the way the parking lot light flickered on a timer and made everything look like a movie that kept skipping frames. He said he is not a monster and not a saint, and then he said, I am sober, like he was telling me his last name, like it was the thing he is now. I asked him if he was going to tell me I made him up. He didn't answer that. He asked me what I wanted from him and I heard dishes in the background and something that sounded like a dog's collar. I told him I wanted facts with nouns in them. He asked which nouns. I said your last name is on a park and your first name is in a newsletter and your face is in a photo and my aunt went to the police and I'm mailing spit, and he exhaled like a tire. He didn't hang up, he didn't say sorry. He told me whose truck he borrowed that night, and it was a name the dog on a boat woman had written in the corner of her paper like she had scribbled it and then decided not to say it out loud. He told me what street he drove down to avoid the lights. He told me what song was on the radio that summer that he couldn't stand for years after because it made his teeth hurt. I didn't tell him that my teeth hurt anyway. I asked him if he would take a test if mine comes back ringing his doorbell from 2 states away. He said he would, not because he owes me anything, and I laughed, and he corrected himself, not because I think that fixes what can't be fixed, and then in the quiet after that sentence I could hear his sister breathing and then a dog sneeze like a punchline and I almost thanked it. When I went back inside, my dad had fallen asleep on the couch with my sister's jellyfish drawing stuck to his arm like a tattoo. The cat had climbed onto the part of him that breathes. I stood there for a second and felt the shape of my name in a stranger's mouth still buzzing in my ear like I had put a shell to it and could hear the ocean. The app for the DNA kit still says 6 to 8 weeks. The park plaque still says what it says. The detective said to write it down while it's sharp. So I am. I am writing it down before it gets dull enough to live with. I don't know what I will do with a yes if I get one. I don't know what I will do with a no. Tonight felt like a string getting tied to the end of something so it can be pulled through the dark without losing it. I'm holding it. I'm trying not to pull too hard.